Hey, what's going on there, guys? So I wanted to get back to talking about The Last of Us, and I hold The Last of Us series as my favorite video game series of all time. And of course, I've posted my fair share of Last of Us content through the years. I've posted playthroughs of both The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. I've posted discussion videos. I even had my own Last of Us dedicated channel for a certain amount of time. But it's been a little while since I've discussed The Last of Us, and I want to get back here in 2025, start talking about why I love these games again, and posting gameplay videos in the future here. And I'm excited to talk about The Last of Us again. I have that itch to talk about it. So let's dive deep into why I love these games, my history, and let's get into this video. So I've been a huge fan of Naughty Dog, the developer of Uncharted, The Last of Us, and of course back in the day, Jak and Daxter and Crash Bandicoot, for well over a decade at this point, more like 15 years at this point. And it really was Uncharted 2 that made Naughty Dog my favorite developer. And I just became obsessed with Naughty Dog, and I followed every trailer they would release, any news that would become a Naughty Dog, any documentary I would watch. And we get to the Spike Video Game Awards in 2011 after Uncharted 3 had released, and Naughty Dog had announced The Last of Us. And of course, I think a few weeks before that, The Last of Us was teased in Uncharted 3, and it wasn't supposed to be. It was accidentally, they left the Easter egg in Uncharted 3 with a newspaper front page in that open and bar area in Uncharted 3. I think it showed something about like the deadly cordyceps fungus with the ants. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that kind of let the cat out of the bag for Naughty Dog. And then I remember they released a teaser trailer right before the Video Game Awards, and people were speculating what this was all about. And the idea of a new Naughty Dog IP at that time, like going away from Uncharted, I'll admit at the time I was like, oh, I just can't get enough of Uncharted. But in hindsight, I'm glad they moved on from Uncharted and moved on to something else in The Last of Us. And of course, we're modern day here. We have another new IP that they're working on, Intergalactic, which is my most anticipated game at the moment. But we get to the Spike Video Game Awards, and they announced The Last of Us, and it was definitely a different vibe, a different sort of thing we're not used to seeing out of Naughty Dog. And yeah, so Last of Us debuted at the Spike Video Game Awards, and I just became intrigued by this game. I wanted to know as much as I could without spoiling it too much for me before I played it. But we had The Last of Us Game Informer cover that came out where they had a whole article on The Last of Us, and just any trailer, any of the pre-release hype, I was buying, and I was quite intrigued by this premise of a post-apocalyptic Naughty Dog game. And I remember reading the Last of Us Game Informer article, and I remember reading the article. I don't remember specifically what was written about in the article, but I remember looking at this piece of concept art, and I want to say it was somewhere in like the Pittsburgh area, the concept art, and just vegetation had overtaken Pittsburgh, the city, and it just like how nature overtook this major metropolitan area after a post-apocalyptic event had happened many years ago. And I remember seeing, I think it was like a deer near the water or some sort of animal near the water, and I don't know, I remember that concept art, and that really kind of intrigued me about this world, and got me more hyped for the release of this game. So we fast forward to June 14th of 2013, and I'm actually graduating from high school that very same day. And in the morning, we had our morning final practice for the ceremony of our graduation. And I remember around maybe 10 or 11, you know, they just let us out and we were just gonna go home until, I don't know, later that day where we would come back. And I got in my car and I of course I had pre-ordered this very copy right here of The Last of Us from GameStop. And, you know, I figured, well, I have a few hours to kill. I might as well go pick up one of my most anticipated games ever. And, you know, I brought it home. I went to GameStop, brought it home, and I played the initial opening. And, oh yeah, by the way, if I haven't said it yet, there are going to be major spoilers, and I'm going to be spoiling everything Last of Us related in this video. But I got to the initial opening with, here comes the spoiler, Sarah's death, and I just remember immediately just being sucked into that world. And it was just such a, you know, between starting the game playing as Sarah and trying to escape this apocalyptic event where, you know, everyone's trying to get out of Texas and they don't know what's going on. It's chaotic, and you're in the car with Joel and Tommy, and it's just one of the most memorable openings to any video game. A very chaotic opening, but very memorable and impactful. But also at the end of the prologue where Sarah dies, it's very, very sad, and just immediately you feel for Joel's character in that moment.
Sarah, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. No. No, no, no. Please. 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 Please don't do this. Please.
You know, that's all I played the day it came out, because I had to get ready for graduation. I was, you know, I remember just going to graduation thinking, oh man, I just want to play more of The Last of Us. But I had to be patient and I had to get back to it. And of course I got back to it and played it through. And I think in that initial playthrough, I was just trying to soak in everything I just experienced from the game. I think before The Last of Us came out, I think I was almost like half expecting it to be Uncharted meets The Walking Dead, but it's really not that. So yeah, I finished The Last of Us for the first time, and I was just, I knew what I experienced at the time was something very special, but as I will probably talk about more and more in this video, The Last of Us, they're games that the stories are really thought-provoking, and anytime I've finished or a playthrough of both of these games, there's something that always just sticks with me, and there's something I'm constantly peeling back the layers to, trying to dissect certain story elements and what certain things mean. And so I would say after my first time playing The Last of Us, I wasn't like, oh my god, this is the best game I've ever played, it's better than Uncharted 2, it's a masterpiece. It really was over time, after fully digesting what I experienced. And yeah, and the future playthroughs, of course I have played The Last of Us now either 12 or 13 times through full playthroughs to completion. And it's just, you know, the more I play these games, the more I take out of it, and the more I dissect it, and the games resonate with me, they stick with me long after I played through. And a lot of games don't do that. It's, you know, I play a lot of games, I play them through, I enjoy them, and then, you know, I just move on with my life. But it really was something, the more I dissected after playing through that summer of 2013, it just more and more, the more I thought about it, it's like, wow, this game really is special, and the characters, the world is interesting, you know, the combat is intense, It's very intense combat and stealth combat. It's, you know, it's not overly complex in terms of combat in The Last of Us Part 1, but the atmosphere, the tone of it, and just how it really does feel like a fight for survival in a lot of these sequences, these gameplay sequences, and especially on the higher difficulties. It's just, you know, you're fully locked in when you play The Last of Us, and trying to sneak your way out of certain situations, maybe trying to sneakily stealth kill certain enemies to get to your next destination. And, you know, the intensity of running into infected and the clickers, and, you know, getting through all that, and, you know, making sure you're with Ellie and protecting Ellie, and she has your back too. So it's just, in combat, I just feel engaged, and it's intense. And I mean, the whole game is intense, story, gameplay, but it's just impactful, and it just, that whole first experience, just, I couldn't get over it after. And I played it, I think I played it through a second time that summer, and it quickly just became a game I held very near and dear to me. And I know with The Last of Us Part 2, before it was officially announced, there was a discussion among the internet masses, is like, does The Last of Us need a sequel with that ending? And, you know, the ending to the original Last of Us is one of the most perfect endings to anything, period. Any video game, any form of media. You know, with Joel taking Ellie away from the Fireflies to save her life, and pretty much halted any chance there was of making a cure for humanity, stopped the Fireflies from doing so, and Joel lying about that to Ellie right to her face.
Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Okay.
It's one of the big moral conundrums of the Last of Us series. It's like, was Joel in the right? Should he have done what he had done? And, you know, that I've talked about before that ending, but that ending is just, I love that ending so much, and I can understand why before The Last of Us Part 2 was officially announced, why some people are like, no, that ending is so perfect, The Last of Us 1. This can be a one-off game, The Last of Us. Even with that amazing ending to The Last of Us, I was like, this can't be the only Last of Us game. Like, I want more Last of Us, and I know some people may disagree, like, it should have just been a one-off game. For me, I wanted more Last of Us. I wanted more of that world. I wanted more of Joel and Ellie's story, and like, what happened after that big lie? And I remember in 2016 there had been some rumors and rumblings that The Last of Us Part 2 was in development, but nothing concrete. And, you know, going back to that time, I was in college. I was in my senior year of college, and I wasn't paying as close attention to the game industry as I am now, or I was in high school, just because I was busy, and I was actually in the middle of studying finals right before The Last of Us Part 2 was officially announced. And Last of Us Part 2 being officially announced, I was caught off guard by, and it was at the PlayStation Experience event in 2016, and you know, they saved it as that one last thing, as Steve Jobs like to used to do at his Apple conferences.
And now we've had some amazing content. The guys come up and came and shared that with you, but there's one more thing. There's one more special unveil we have for you tonight. The game is in early development.
I never thought they would announce something as big as a sequel to The Last of Us at a PlayStation experience. I thought, you know, maybe E3. So I was completely blindsided when they announced The Last of Us Part 2, and I was floored. That trailer, that initial teaser trailer with, you know, Ellie singing her song and Joel there, and
What are you doing, kiddo? You really gonna go through with this?
I'm gonna find. And I'm gonna kill. Every last one of them.
just the whole scene was just, it was breathtaking, that trailer, and it gave me goosebumps. It really did. And the crowd's reaction, the crowd was going nuts of the announcement of what is definitely one of the most beloved PlayStation games of all time in The Last of Us, up there with Final Fantasy VII, and I would say, you know, some of the Metal Gear games and God of War. But that announcement just floored me, and my hype level was through the roof.
It's over 9,000! 9,000?! There's no way that can be right!
And any trailer, any tidbit of news before The Last of Us Part 2 came out, I was all over. I was fully engaged, and I was super hyped. And you know, that initial gameplay trailer at E3 2018 really blew me away in terms of like the animations and, you know, the new stuff that they showed that wasn't in the previous game, like going prone, and the graphical fidelity and just everything about it, and just, you know, how intense it was. It was like, I mean, The Last of Us Part 1 is a very intense experience, emotional experience. The Last of Us Part 2 just ratchets that up another level. It's such what I would, you know, experience as a very, very intense game, a very dark game. And the trailer in E3 2018 just blew me away. The gameplay, the animations, the environments, and yeah, so I was just ready for The Last of Us Part 2 to come out, and I was counting down the days constantly and waiting for when would they announce the official release date. And I believe they announced the official release date, or they had to delay it multiple times. I think initially they were trying to get it out for late 2019, and then it was delayed to early 2020, and then we had the pandemic in 2020, and you know, it goes without saying, we know that it shut down the whole world and shut down a lot of things and delayed a lot of things. So that was a very strange time, and very it was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And you know, they had to delay The Last of Us to June, which I was relieved that when we got the release date, because I remember when they announced that they're delaying The Last of Us in like February, or it might have been actually, I think initially it was supposed to come out in February. Now that I think about it, and then they might have delayed it to April, and then they announced a delay again in maybe March or something. But I just you know, we're going through this world worldwide pandemic, and I'm just like, I want to know when The Last of Us is going to come out. When is The Last of Us Part 2 going to release? And I remember there was that period of time where I'm at home, I'm laid off from my job, and all I have is video games and TV and stuff to make the time go by, and I'm just wondering, when is The Last of Us Part 2 gonna release? And it, you know, eventually it was, I don't know if it was like a couple of weeks after they announced the delay, that the game was being delayed. They just said it was being delayed, and they didn't know, couldn't give us a release date at all. I'm like, when is it gonna come out? It's like obviously that wasn't, maybe that shouldn't have been top of the mind at that moment, since, you know, we're going with something crazy at the time. And but when they finally announced that release date, I was somewhat relieved. I'm just like, all right, now you better hit this release date. I'm gonna count down the days. And of course, this is when we get to what would make The Last of Us Part 2 a pretty contentious release. And I don't think this did any favors, and I'm referring to the massive story leak that happened, I don't know, maybe a month or two before the game came out. And a lot of major plot points of the story was leaked, and some of them were true, some of them were false, and the internet went berserk and did not like a lot of what the leaks were saying. And it was just a very strange time, and I was doing my best to avoid the leaks, and unfortunately I really wasn't spoiled too much, but I was spoiled on one major thing, and that was Joel's death. And all it was I was on Twitter one day, or I was on Twitter the day the leaks had happened, and I must have pulled up a tweet regarding The Last of Us, and for some reason I went into the replies, and it just showed a picture of Joel's bloody head, and it just said Joel dies. And I was obviously pretty mad at that person just did that, and it's just like, wow, thank you for spoiling it, dick. But you know, I was upset, but that's all I saw was just an image of Joel's bloody head, and it just saying Joel dies. I didn't know who kills Joel, I didn't know the full context, and I didn't look to read all the leaks and all. I know a lot of people did, but I wasn't gonna do that. So I mean, yeah, it was confirmed to me that Joel was gonna die, but I didn't know anything else. You know, I didn't know the full context of the story. I didn't know the full context of that event. So initially I was upset, but I kind of got over it quickly, because I kind of thought Joel may die in this game before even the leaks had happened. Well, I mean, if you look at the initial trailer for The Last of Us Part 2, and people had brought it up at the time, it's like Joel seems almost like ghostly. Like he seems like he's like a spirit talking to Ellie in a certain extent. Joel felt like he wasn't fully there. You know what I mean? So it kind of was, I wasn't shocked that Joel died in The Last of Us Part 2 when it was confirmed to me. It was like, I kind of half expected that. So, but anyway, those leaks were, not fun trying to avoid those leaks, and a lot of people were upset, and I didn't know the full reason why they were upset. I mean, obviously I understood that a beloved character like Joel being killed is going to upset a certain amount of people, and I understand it was more than that. And, you know, I was just thinking, you know what? I'm going to do my best to avoid these leaks. I'm going to play the game when it comes out, make my own assessment, and see where it goes from there. So we finally get to the release date of The Last of Us Part 2 on June 19th of 2020. And, you know, I was so relieved to finally have this game coming out. You know, just after all the nonsense and drama before the game had released, I was just ready to dive into this and just make my own opinion on how I felt about the game. And I played through the initial prologue of The Last of Us Part 2, which, you know, I would say it's like a 2 or 3 hour long prologue, you know, get into the part where Joel dies. And that's what really caught me off guard, is how early in the game Joel died. I didn't fully expect it to be that early in the game, but, you know, the first time I experienced it, Joel's dying, that was probably the most intense scene I've ever seen in a video game. Like, I remember I was shaken when, like my body was like that, my arms were like that, when Abby fires the shotgun blast. And, you know, it was so intense. It was so kind of traumatizing to a certain extent. And I think that was Naughty Dog's intention to a certain extent with this crazy intense story. And, you know, I got emotional. I got emotional over Joel's death, and seeing Ellie's reaction and just how helpless she was just watching Joel die in such a brutal fashion. And
Joel, get up. Joel, fucking get up. Please stop. Please don't do this. Joel, please get up. No! I'll fucking kill you. Ellie. I'm sorry.
Jesse! They're down here!
very intense and very, very, very sad. And I just, you know, that's the thing about The Last of Us. You get attached to these characters, and it's something about the characters in these games that really set it apart from other games for me. It's how much you grow to care for Joel and Ellie, and how much you grew to care for them from the first game. And seeing a beloved character like Joel, it felt like, you know, someone I knew near and dear, dying in front of me so graphically and just so brutally. And it was the most brutal death I've ever seen in a video game. It was, they didn't pull any punches away, you know. It was it was crazy. But it made, I wasn't upset. Like, I wasn't like, oh, this would never happen to Joel in the world of The Last of Us. Like, I knew the world of The Last of Us was intense. In the first Last of Us, we see his 12-year-old daughter get gunned down in the first 20 minutes. We see Sam and Henry, you know, die all of a sudden in a very messed up way, and, you know, Henry having to kill his younger brother Sam, and then Henry committed suicide. We see David with Ellie, and that full chapter in The Last of Us where, you know, David captured Ellie, and Ellie had to try to escape David, and David had, let's just say, very dark intentions with Ellie, and Ellie had to kill David in such a intense graphic scene. So it's like, you know, with the death of Joel, yeah, it was brutal, and people were just thrown aback of how they killed Joel. Like, not only the fact that they killed such a beloved character, but they did it in such a brutal fashion. You know, I will talk about certain story moments later in the video, so but I got to that scene and just, you know, it floored me emotionally, and I was shaken. I was quite shaken by that. It was such a heavy moment. And, you know, we get through The Last of Us Part 2. It's a lot longer than Last of Us Part 1, about twice as long. And, you know, I just experienced that game and all the moments, whether it be, you know, super dark or beautiful. There's certain just beautiful moments in this game, just like The Last of Us Part 1, that just took my breath away, how beautiful they were. And I get through all Last of Us Part 2, I finish it, and again, I was kind of just like with Last of Us Part 1, I still like digesting what I experienced. And initially I was not sure how I fully felt about the story. I thought everything about the game was immaculate, and just, you know, I just was not sure how I felt about the story yet. I thought, you know, the gameplay was improved, that, you know, the new animation systems, the ability to go prone, and all the new different variations in combat, you know, whether it be through gunplay or stealth or melee. It's just the combat in The Last of Us Part 2 is amazing, and I think a lot better than The Last of Us Part 1 combat. And I do like The Last of Us Part 1 combat, but the Last of Us Part 2 combat is special, in my opinion. So yeah, with The Last of Us Part 2, I had to take time to digest and try to understand the story and peel back the layers to that story. And, you know, just it took a little bit longer time for me to fully fall in love with the story of The Last of Us Part 2 and what the messages they were trying to tell. It wasn't until really the second playthrough where the game fully clicked with me, and I was like, this is a masterpiece. This is every bit as good as The Last of Us Part 1, and the emotional highs of this game surpass the first game, and the combat is superior, and there's certain moments in The Last of Us Part 2, I mean, there were in Last of Us Part 1 that just make me bawl. Like, they break me, like, emotionally. The ending, you know, the museum scene is, you know, one of the more happy moments, but that was such a beautiful moment. And just, there's so many moments from both these games that just stick with you long after you're done playing. And I don't experience that from many games, if any. Like I've said before, a lot of video games I just play, I enjoy, get through them, get through the story, and I don't really ever think about them again. I, you know, move on with my life. So I would be doing a great disservice to The Last of Us Part 2 if I didn't talk about Abby and, you know, the person that kills Joel. And Abby is a very controversial character. You know, I get why Abby is such a controversial character, and I get why Abby really made The Last of Us Part 2 a title that people either really love or really hate. You know, it's just so divisive. It was, a lot of people love The Last of Us Part 2 and think it's every bit as good as The Last of Us Part 1 or better, and then there's people that absolutely despise The Last of Us Part 2 and might have loved The Last of Us Part 1. And I believe that Abby is probably the biggest reason why. So my first time playing The Last of Us Part 2 and playing as Abby, you know, I was surprised. Like, I know, and then before Abby, you know, does the deed and kills Joel in such a horrific way, we do play as Abby. And, you know, when I first experienced that, and then, you know, Abby killed Joel and going through all that emotions, and then we're back to Ellie, it's like, I didn't think, oh, maybe later in the game we'll go back to playing as Abby. So I was surprised that, you know, later in the game, after we go through all 3 days in Seattle with Ellie as she tries to hunt down Abby and her crew, and you know goes on this dark manhunt. We switch over to Abby, and it was kind of like, whoa, kind of a whiplash effect. The first time you played as Abby is like, we're playing as Abby, and then you know it says we go to Seattle day 1, and then you quickly realize it's like Naughty Dog is gonna put us through all 3 days from Abby's perspective, as you know, before we saw Ellie's perspective all 3 days in Seattle and the horrific events that had occurred. So we really get to know Abby, and we get to see her perspective on things, and we get to see ultimately why she killed Joel and seek revenge against Joel. And of course it's Joel killed Abby's father. Joel killed Abby's father, who was the surgeon that was going to perform the surgery that would have killed Ellie to extract the vaccine for the cordyceps fungus in The Last of Us Part 1. So the first time you see this moment unfold, it's like, oh, so that's who Abby is. And it really makes you ponder what Joel did. And like I said before, that what he did at the end is a very morally gray thing that he did. I ultimately understand it, and I think I agree with what Joel, or I can, maybe, I don't know, agree, but I'm not speaking as a parent here, but I would feel like if any parent was forced in this crazy situation that Joel was in, and he looked at himself as Ellie's adopted father, and I can see why Joel would do something so crazy like that, because I think that's what a parent can cause people to act in the name of love for their children. And I get why it's such a morally great thing at the same time, but I can see why Abby was so upset too. And Joel killed her father. Joel killed many Firefly soldiers. Joel pretty much, disbanded, caused the Fireflies to disband for many years. And, it's a very complex thing that, were the Fireflies in the right? Was Joel in the right? We play as Abby, we go through the days of Seattle, and what you will see is, Abby, even though she got her revenge and she killed Joel, it's not like everything was all hunky-dory now, and she was in a completely happy place, and life was amazing. It really was kind of the opposite. You can see that Abby was not fully fulfilled from what killing Joel did, I think, and this is kind of open for perspective, but we see Abby, and she's a WLF soldier in Seattle, and she's involved, or she's part of this militia that is in war against this other group called the Seraphites, or this religious cult. Along the way, Abby gets captured by the Seraphites, and she, we go back to the Paris Games Week trailer where she's hung up and about to be killed, and it's a very graphic scene, and she's rescued by these other Seraphites, these siblings called Lev and Yara. And it's one of the coolest scenes in the whole game. Just like the whole aesthetic, how dark it is, and the lighting in that scene. And Lev and Yara decide to rescue Abby, and it's just an act of selflessness. And this is a Seraphite, two Seraphites, Lev and Yara, who kind of were disapproved by the Seraphite group and basically not accepted as part of the cult anymore. But it's really because Yara, you know, she's brutally beaten up with a hammer on her arm in this very graphic scene, and Lev tries to rescue Yara, and they ultimately decide to also rescue Abby, who's, you know, even though she's part of the opposing militia, Lev and Yara had kind of, you know, not been accepted as part of the Seraphites anymore, and, you know, that's when they first unite together. But Yara is badly banged up, and, you know, Abby tries to help Yara with her arm, and makes a splint for her, and you know, ultimately Abby gets disbanded from Lev and Yara, and later that night Abby has a dream of that hospital in Salt Lake City, you know, walking down that hallway that we see multiple times throughout the game, and when she opens up the surgery room, she sees Lev and Yara dead and, you know, hung up by the Seraphites, and, you know, she felt guilty, I think, leaving them behind, and she decides to ultimately go back and help them. And, you know, we see that Yara's arm is not doing well, that it needs medical attention, and, you know, we go on this whole crazy adventure to get antibiotics, to get things that can help Mel operate on Yara's arm. And this is a moment that really I found quite spiritual. We see Abby get back with Lev and Yara, and Owen and Abby have just a moment to talk after, you know, the surgery is successful on Yara's arm. And, you know, Abby's just pondering this, like, you know, what happened to us? And Owen just says, maybe we stopped looking for the light. You know, they're fireflies, they're ex-fireflies, and that was the saying, the slogan is, when you're lost in darkness, look for the light.
They're just kids.
I know.
What happened to us?
Maybe we stopped looking for the light.
Maybe.
And I just found that very, like the first time I played Last of Us Part 2, like, that didn't really hit me, but, like, the more I played the game and saw that scene more, I just realized how kind of profound that saying is, and I think that really does connect to Joel. I think it connects to Ellie. I think it just connects to, you know, these three characters that we've played throughout the series. We have Joel, who lost Sarah and was, you know, for many years a smuggler, and he did, as hinted in the last Part 1, did many dark things to survive, and, you know, with his brother Tommy. And, you know, Ellie, we have obviously losing Joel in the Last of Us Part 2, and her revenge quest, and how she had really, you know, as the Pearl Jam song says, she had lost herself. If, you know, she had lost Joel and she wasn't the same, and she became obsessed with getting revenge on Abby. And we have Abby, who seek revenge, lost herself, and just became a different person after her dad died. And, you know, Abby goes through with the revenge, and, you know, we see it doesn't really bring fulfillment out of her. It doesn't bring peace to her. I think that's what I'm trying to say here is, you know, this act of revenge for Ellie and Abby. We learn that their characters just trying to find peace with them in themselves, and I think that's a big part of The Last of Us Part 2 that people don't talk about. It's these characters are just, they're so broken from their traumas, and they're just trying to find peace with them in themselves. And I think Abby thought killing Joel, that would bring peace in her life, and what we learn is it really didn't. And you know, playing as Abby, we kind of just go through like a redemption arc with her, and I think what's brilliant about it is kind of like a warning for Ellie. It's like, no, this is not, this quest you're on it's not worth it, and it's not gonna bring you inner peace. And I find that quite, like, that is what I took away from The Last of Us Part 2, a big thing, and it's I think a deeply spiritual messaging. And you know, obviously I will talk about more about Ellie in a bit here, but I think that moment really hit me. It was either like I think the third time I was playing The Last of Us Part 2, when we get to Owen saying, maybe we stop looking for the light, you know, like, you know, Abby's asking what happened to us, and then after that conversation, you know, Abby, we're in her dreams again, and she's in that hallway again, when she walks down that hallway to the surgery room, and she opens the door, and this time it's not seeing her dad dead. It's not seeing Levin Yara dead. It's seeing her dad alive, and kind of just like, almost kind of like smiling at her. And the amount of story moments that stick with you, there's not a lot of games where I can remember each story from start to finish, and they just stick with me, those moments, whether it be through gameplay or environmental storytelling, or, you know, we have doing storytelling in a cutscene. And the characters, I think, is another thing that Naughty Dog has always been strong at, whether it be Uncharted or Jak and Daxter, or hell, if you even want to say Crash Bandicoot. But I mean, that's a completely different Naughty Dog that made Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter. But with Uncharted, they made characters that you felt attached to, and with The Last of Us, I feel attached to them, even though you could argue that these characters are morally gray characters. They're not always doing the best things, but at the end of the day, when you play The Last of Us, this is what I say is, you observe how they survive in this world, even if they do things that are morally gray, or you know, morally pretty messed up. But at the same time, you understand that they're survivors of this harsh world, and they do certain things out of love for other people, out of anger for the tragedies that they experience, whether it be Ellie, whether it be Joel, whether it be Abby. So the characters, I felt so attached. They feel like real people, the way they're performed, the way they're written. It just, the execution with the characters in Naughty Dog games and The Last of Us is just, I think that's really maybe the secret sauce of what makes a Naughty Dog game special, is those characters. And just, a lot of games I play, like Horizon, or I don't know, I don't know why Horizon comes to mind first, but like, I've played, you know, multiple Horizon games, and I couldn't tell you anything about Aloy's friends or their names, or do I even care about them? No, not really. I don't even really care about Aloy that much. Not to crap on Horizon in this video. I like Horizon, but there's certain things in other games that's just like, The Last of Us did this so much better. The characters are so much better, and I mean, even games like I love, like God of War, like I like the characters of Kratos and Atreus, but like I'm not like fully attached to them or really care about them like I do Joel and Ellie or even Abby. So it's just something about The Last of Us and the way it's presented, the way it's written, that makes you care. It makes you care about the characters. It makes you care about what's going on in the story. I feel like in terms of like presentation, the way the game's presented, like, yeah, it's a narratively heavy game, but it doesn't. I'm playing Death Stranding 2 right now, and I really like Death Stranding 2. It's one of my favorite games on PS5. But man, do they have like these long drawn out cutscenes where they just talk and talk and talk and talk and try to explain the lore and certain things about the world, and it just, a lot of times it's just like, all right, can we get back to the gameplay, please? And with The Last of Us, I don't ever feel that way, where like the cutscene is really dragging on. It's like, oh, they have nothing really that important to say that I really care that much. It's like, you know, every time a cutscene comes on in The Last of Us, it feels like a reward, and it doesn't feel like it's overdrawn. It's memorable, it's impactful, and it just, you feel locked in, whether it be through gameplay or even a cutscene. And that's the thing about The Last of Us, is that melding of gameplay and story is not always something easy to do for a lot of games. I think a lot of games have great gameplay, but the story is lacking, or vice versa. The story is amazing and the gameplay is, you know, forgettable and boring. Like, I look at like games like The Walking Dead, Telltale. It's like one of the best stories in any video game. And very similar to similar feelings of The Last of Us, because you have two characters, and Clementine and why can't I think of the main character's name in The Walking Dead? Oh my god. You think I would memorize what's his name? Lee. And, you know, just without spoiling The Walking Dead, but that was a game where I felt very attached to those two characters. I was really engaged with the story, but the gameplay is just point and click. It's boring, forgettable. You just play that game for the story. Whereas The Last of Us, I can jump into a match of, you know, Last of Us Part 2 no return mode, and I can get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And I plan to actually be streaming no return mode pretty soon here, by the way. Or you could just play. There's been playthroughs of The Last of Us where I skip the cutscenes, and I'm just enjoying playing the gameplay segment, and I still get I get storytelling through the gameplay, through the environmental storytelling. My point is, I feel like The Last of Us series is the best melding of gameplay and story that I've played. Like, there's so many games that it's just either the gameplay is a lot superior or the story is superior. It just, the way it's presented and transitions from gameplay to cutscenes and story moments, environmental story parts, it feels like a smooth, seamless experience. And I'm just gonna say, you know, the moments of The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2, just, there's so many moments that stick with me, whether it be from the beginning of The Last of Us Part 1 to Sam and Henry's death, to the smaller, more quieter environmental story moments. You know, Itch's story, you know, through those letters in The Last of Us Part 1 was very, very cool and interesting. You know, the farmhouse scene in The Last of Us Part 1 was, my god, you want to talk about like a cutscene that just like floored me the first time I saw that. I had never experienced that in a video game, where I'm getting goosebumps from the acting in a video game. Like I was like, is this a movie? Like, are these Oscar level actors here? It's like, you know, the dialogue, the emotion of that moment, you know, it gave me goosebumps, and I got teary-eyed, and I still get teary-eyed anytime I see that scene. And, you know, Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker do amazing jobs as Joel and Ellie, and they are Joel and Ellie to me.
Tommy knows this area better
Fuck
than...
that.
Well, I'm sorry. I trust him better than I trust myself.
Stop with the bullshit. What are you so afraid of? That I'm gonna end up like Sam? I can't get infected. I can take care of myself.
How many close calls have we had?
Well, we seem to be doing all right so far.
And now you'll be doing even better with Tommy.
I'm not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel. But I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad. And we are going our separate ways.
Get it together. We're not alone.
And then with part 2, they continue to just have these moments that just stick with you. And whether it be, you know, some of the bigger moments from Joel's death to the end where Ellie lets go of trying to kill Abby, whether it be, you know, even the museum with Joel and Ellie and going into the spacecraft, and it's, you know, it's Ellie's birthday and she's wearing the space helmet, and just that whole interaction, and just it's just a moment you just got to experience and just admire. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment. You know, the giraffe scene is such a, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is amazing. And video games are truly an art form. But yeah, it's just, there's moments, take your breath away in this series, whether, I mean, beautiful and sad, you know, tragic, you know, whatever it may be, but it's just, and I just, you know, the music, I gotta say the music, which I plan to have the music be playing in the background for this video, so you heard a little bit, but just, I have both Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 soundtrack on my Spotify, and before the video today I was just re-listening to a lot of the music, trying to get myself in the mindset, because the music is just so, it's so hauntingly beautiful, I would say. And it's just, anytime you listen to a certain track, you remember certain feelings and certain moments that you were experiencing with these games. And I highly recommend, even if you don't intend on playing The Last of Us, I would still say, you know, check out The Last of Us music. And it's very chill, but it's very chill, but definitely melancholy music is probably how I would describe it. But there are some more intense tracks, like The Cycle of Violence from The Last of Us Part 2, which man, that song that hits hard. Yeah, the emotional resonance of both The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 is unlike any other games I played before. It just, the way it impacts you. And there's been multiple moments where I've cried to, and I've even bawled to. I mean, it's just, the moments in these games hit on a different level. And I think the moment that broke me the most was the ending of The Last of Us Part 2, when, you know, Ellie was about to drown Abby and kill her, and you know, get her revenge as she thought going into it. And you know, it just, that whole moment where, you know, they're going into the water and they're gonna leave, and Ellie was gonna let them go, but she was haunted by this flashback, and you know, she obviously has like severe PTSD from that horrific death of Joel, and she just sees Joel's bloody head, and she's just reminded again and haunted by that horrific death. And she's like, I can't let you go, and she's just so haunted by it. And you know, they get into this intense fight that just is so brutal. And I've never, like, that was like, I keep saying it, how a lot of times in this game you feel like you're actually trying to kill someone, especially in that Ellie versus Abby fight. I felt like I was trying to drown Abby, trying to kill her. It was just, it was so visceral with, and it just I didn't want Ellie to kill Abby. I just wanted her to go and just, you know, end this cycle of violence. And Ellie was about to drown Abby, and we see, and I just get kind of emotional thinking about this, we see Joel and him on the porch with this guitar, and that was, you know, the moment that Ellie helped her find the strength to let go of this fight against Abby and trying to kill her. And instead of seeking revenge, you know, she remembered her finding the strength to forgive Joel for lying to Ellie for all those years about what happened in Salt Lake City.
Go. Just take him.
A lot of people say, oh, or thought that the message of the story is like, oh, revenge is bad. It's like, it's so much more than revenge is bad. It's, for me, it's multiple messages. It's forgiveness. It's, sure, to a certain extent, in a very black and white way to say it, revenge is bad and doesn't, you know, is not the right solution. But I also think it's just a story of grief and a story of how you deal with losing someone you love in such a dark, messed up world like The Last of Us. And I think the reason why Ellie was finally able to move on from killing Abby is because she felt so guilty for the way she had treated Joel in his final years. And, you know, of course you see all the flashback moments in The Last of Us Part 2, which are amazing moments. and you know what Ellie is thinking about at certain moments in the story, and how it shows, you know, how Joel would, you know, bring her to the museum for her birthday, and it was just a special interaction. But then you see the Firefly, you know, this logo right here, Firefly logo on the wall, and it says liars, and you know, it's just a constant reminder of that what had happened, and how there was uncertainty between Ellie and Joel of what had happened, and kind of a little bit of awkwardness of trying for Ellie to wrap her head around Joel not telling her the truth, and how eventually, you know, Ellie got the full truth and Joel admitted it, and their relationship, Ellie didn't want anything to do with Joel after that, after she had found out, and it was really sad. And you know, it's for her teenage years, a good part of her teenage years, she wasn't talking to Joel, and Joel, you know, obviously continued to still care for Ellie deeply, and as his second daughter. And you know, that when we get to the porch scene, it's kind of like a sigh of relief, because it's like Ellie's finally wanted to move on from that, and wanted to forgive Joel. And that porch scene it's heavy, dude. It's very heavy. It's sad because that's their last interaction before, it's the night before Joel dies. But at the same time, it's also kind of relief, because it's like, okay, well, at least Joel died knowing that Ellie wanted to forgive him and move on. And I know some people will say, oh, the very end in The Last of Us Part 2, where Ellie walks off and leaves her guitar behind, and she, you know, of course she had lost her fingers in the Abby fight, it's just a sad moment, and nothing else you can say. There is sadness to it, but I think there's also a little bit of hope to it as well, because, hear me out, you know, big part of The Last of Us Part 2, we're seeing a different Ellie. We're seeing how much the death of Joel impacted her, and she was just this violent monster who was killing people and doing stuff that shattered relationships with people, and got one of her friends and Jesse killed, and it got, you know, her family, Dina and JJ, they walked out of her life. And Ellie was finally able, I see it as a positive and hopeful, because Ellie was finally able to move on. I think she, like I said before, felt guilty how she treated Joel, and I think she accepted that at least I have this one moment on that porch where she wants to forgive Joel, and Joel is quite relieved as myself in that. And it was just such a beautiful moment, but it's kind of hard to articulate right now. It's such a emotional, powerful moment.
You're such an asshole.
I'm not trying to.
I was supposed to die in that hospital. My life would have fucking mattered. But you took that from me.
If somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
Yeah.
I don't think I can ever forgive you for that. But I would like to try.
I like that.
Okay. I'll see you around.
Yep.
Will there be a Last of Us Part 3? You know, it's kind of been up in the air. Like, Neil Druckmann, the lead writer, is kind of, you know, he said, oh, I don't bet on there being more Last of Us. And, you know, there's been conflicting reports that they are working on Last of Us Part 3. Then there's been Neil Druckmann saying, oh, don't expect more. I think we'll get a Last of Us Part 3 eventually. And I don't know when. It may be after Intergalactic. It may be, you know, a decade from now. But I'm okay taking a break from The Last of Us in terms of new games, but I won't be taking a break from talking about The Last of Us or playing The Last of Us. And I know I've kind of been all over the place with this video, talking about a bunch of different things. It's just I kind of get like to just let me ramble on about The Last of Us. I enjoy peeling back the layers. Like, that's another thing about, and I promise I'm gonna be wrapping this up soon there, guys. There's a lot of things in this story that I find myself dissecting long after I played it. And I'm just like, I'm peeling back the layers of this story and just, you know, trying to understand every element and, you know, maybe certain things that may be more open for interpretation. You know, I watch videos constantly on like story theories about The Last of Us and their stories, and I'm constantly obsessed with trying to peel back the layers and understand the story more and more. And I just find it so satisfying to think about the characters and the world on a deeper level with these games. And like, a lot of games I just don't care about the story. I don't care about the characters. I don't care about certain story elements. I just, you know, I mean, a lot of times it's just what video games first and foremost are made to be great to play and great to engage with. That's, you know, that's what you want out of a game first. And The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 do that, but they marry it with an unbelievable story and stories that just stick with you. And yeah, it's like, I keep thinking about, That moment from Shrek, where Shrek is talking about how I think it's kind of a meme that ogres have layers. They're complicated, you know. It's especially, I feel especially Last of Us Part 2 just like it has so many more layers and plot points and story things going on that it's just I'm constantly peeling back that onion. Like, you know, an onion has a lot of layers, and that's me with The Last of Us, and that's, you know, what Shrek was trying to get across. Ogres are complicated, and it's just I enjoy dissecting the stories of these games, and I cannot wait for Intergalactic, the next new Naughty Dog IP. So anyway, I think we're gonna wrap it up here there, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Last of Us video. There'll be more Last of Us content in the future, and what can I say? I love these games. They're masterpieces. They're my favorite games of all time. And let's wrap it up here, and I will see you in the next video.
No! Layers! Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.